This is Math 97, Quiz 2 topic. Solving a rational equation that simplifies to linear, unlike binomial denominators. All right, so what we want to do when we have an equation with fractions in it is we want to try and find the least common denominator first. Once we find it, if we multiply every term in this equation by the least common denominator, then we will end up canceling things out and there will no longer be fractions. So that's our goal. So the very first step is to try and factor so that we see if we have anything in common between these two. I noticed that 3v and 15 could both divide by 3, and so let's factor that into 3 times the quantity v minus 5. And then I see that this v minus 5 and this v minus 5 are in common. And so to have a common denominator between these two would be 3 times v minus 5 would encompass both of those denominators. So here's what I plan to do. My least common denominator in this case is 3 times v minus 5. So I'm going to multiply every term by that least common denominator. I'll do that in pink. So the first one I'll multiply by 3 times v minus 5. And then I'll multiply this fraction by 3 times v minus 5. And this negative 4 times 3 and v minus 5. And let's see what happens. Okay, if you notice that these v minus 5s cancel out here, leaving us with just 3 times 2, or 6 on the left side of the equation. In the second fraction, the 3 and the v minus 5 both cancel out, so that's the entire denominator canceling out, leaving us with just 6. And then here I have negative 4 times 3, so basically negative 12 times the v minus 5 in parentheses. So let's apply distributive property to that, which would give us negative 12v, and then negative 12 times negative 5 is positive 60. Okay, I would like to add these two like terms, and so let's change this minus 12v to plus negative 12v, and then I'm going to use my commutative property of addition to switch the order of these two terms. So negative 12v plus 6 plus 60. Then the 6 and the 60 are next to one another and can be added. And so now I have 6 equals negative 12v plus 66. Okay, I'd like to get the negative 12v alone, so let's subtract 66 from both sides, leaving me with negative 60 on the left-hand side and negative 12v on the right-hand side. I'll divide both sides by negative 12, leaving me with just v on the right side and 5. So a potential answer would be v equals 5, but I have to remember that when I have fractions, I want to make sure that there's no zeros in the denominator. So if you look at this original problem, I had a 2 over a v minus 5. You notice that if I put that v equals 5 in here for the v, I would get 5 minus 5, or a 0, in the denominator. That's undefined. I'm not allowed to divide by 0. And so the only possible answer to this equation doesn't work because it makes the equation undefined. So there is no solution to this first equation since v equals 5 makes the denominator 0. Okay, so now let's take a look at our second example. Again, we're going to solve for x, and we're thinking about trying to factor this denominator to see if these two have anything in common. And so if I factored that into 2 times the quantity x plus 6, I see that, oh yes, x plus 6 is in common between those two denominators. And so in this second example, my least common denominator would be 2 times x plus 6. So I'm going to multiply each individual term in this equation by 2 times x minus 6. So this is really the denominator rewritten. Okay, so multiplying by 2 times x plus 6 in that first term, multiplying by 2 x plus 6 in the second one, and multiplying by 2 and x plus 6 in this third term. Okay, so let's see what happens. On the left-hand side, the x plus 6 in the numerator cancels with the x plus 6 in the denominator, leaving me with just 2 times 7, or 14, on the left-hand side. In the second term, I have 2 canceling with 2, and x plus 6 canceling with x plus 6, and so only 5 remains for that second term. Okay, and then finally nothing here cancels out, and so I just have the negative 2 times the 2, or negative 4 times the quantity x plus 6. When I use the distributive property, that gives me minus 4x minus 24. Okay, just like before, we can use our commutative property of addition. Let's just change this minus 4x to plus negative 4x so that it's a little easier to see. Then I switch the order of these two terms, negative 4x plus 5 minus 24. Okay, now I can combine the 5 minus the 24, which would be negative 19. So I have negative 4x minus 19, and on the left-hand side, 14. Okay, let's go ahead and add that 19 to both sides. When I do that, I get 33 on the left-hand side equals negative 4x on the right-hand side. Let's divide both sides by negative 4. So I have x equals negative 33/4. Okay, now I want to make sure that this isn't one of my excluded values for this problem. So go back to the original problem, and you see that I have an x plus 6 in the denominator, which would mean I'm not allowed to have a negative 6 as an answer. Well, this is obviously not negative 6, so this is okay so far. Okay, here in this second fraction, again, it would be a negative 6 that would make the denominator into 0 and the fraction undefined, and so I'm still okay. And so in this case, this is our solution. X is negative 33/4.